The crystalline dome of the Galactic Council chambers had witnessed 10,000 years of perfect order. Until today, Junior Observer Tyleth burst through the sacred threshold, all 6 tentacles trembling in frequencies that made the ancient quartz walls resonate. The 12 council members, beings who had evolved beyond the need for sudden movements, shifted their attention with unprecedented haste. Impossible. Tyleth's translators struggled to keep up with their agitated color patterns. The primitives, they've done something impossible. High Counselor Zix, whose species had achieved spaceflight when Earth's humans were still perfecting stone tools, raised a photosensitive appendage. Compose yourself, Junior Observer. What primitives? The humans. Tyleth's chromatophores flashed in distress. They've created stable wormholes using their tentacles twisted in what the Council recognized as deep existential distress, using technology that shouldn't work. In the following silence, the Council's collective consciousness rippled with disbelief. They had monitored Earth, of course. It was their duty to observe all potentially spacefaring species. But humans were centuries, if not millennia, from achieving faster-than-light travel. Their mathematics was primitive, their physics models incomplete, their understanding of quantum mechanics barely embryonic. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing a recording that would reshape galactic history. Dr. Jessica Reynolds stood in what the Council recognized as a surprisingly crude laboratory by galactic standards. The human female, distinguished by her red hair and what appeared to be corrective eye lenses, was speaking into a primitive recording device. Test 47 of the Reynolds-Martinez quantum tunnel. Previous attempts resulted in catastrophic containment failure, but the new coffee ring calculation suggest. She paused, pushing her glasses up her nose. Well, suggests this might actually work, or tear apart the fabric of space-time. Either way, we're about to find out. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The casual way she addressed potential universal destruction was disturbing. The recording showed Dr. Reynolds activating what appeared to be a cobbled-together array of machinery. The Council's analytical systems identified parts from what humans called a microwave oven, 3 gaming computers, and most bizarrely, a modified coffee maker. By the first light, Elder Vtak whispered, their crystalline form vibrating with shock. They're using consumer electronics to attempt quantum manipulation. Before anyone could respond, the recording showed the impossible. A stable wormhole, small but perfect, formed between 2 points in Dr. Reynolds' laboratory. But what truly horrified the Council wasn't the wormhole itself. It was the fact that the humans' calculations, scrawled on what they called a napkin and stained with rings from their stimulant beverage coffee, completely ignored 3 fundamental laws of physics that the Council had established eons ago. The broadcast was picked up across all known frequencies. Tyleth continued, their color patterns showing signs of professional trauma. She accidentally invented a new form of faster-than-light communication while documenting their impossible FTL travel breakthrough. The Council's archives automatically displayed Earth's technological timeline. The speed of advancement was unprecedented. They had progressed from first-powered flight to splitting the atom in mere decades. From their first space launch to lunar landing in less than 12 years. Their first crude computers to quantum processing in less than a century. How? The question came from the shadowed alcove where the eldest sat. How do they advance so rapidly without destroying themselves? Tyleth's tentacles writhed. That's the other impossible thing. They achieved all this while constantly at war with themselves. They split the atom while still using propeller aircraft. They reached space while half their world faced starvation. They solved quantum entanglement while arguing about whether their planet was flat. The Council chambers erupted in discussion. In 10,000 years, no species had achieved spaceflight without first achieving planetary unity. It was considered a universal constant, a law as fundamental as gravity. The humans had just broken that law too. Grand Arbitrator Valthun had negotiated first contact with 37 species across 12,000 years. None had prepared him for Betty's Heartland Diner in North Platte, Nebraska. More coffee, hon. The elderly waitress tilted her pot toward Valthun's empty cup, seemingly unfazed by his crystalline exoskeleton and the fact that he didn't actually drink coffee. No, thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Davidson answered for him, his weathered face breaking into an easy smile. I think our friend here is still processing the cherry pie. Valthun was indeed processing many things. The Council's first contact protocol required meeting Earth's supreme leader in their grandest chamber. Instead, he sat in a vinyl booth beneath flickering fluorescent lights, surrounded by what humans called truck drivers and regulars, while the chosen representative of humanity drowned his apple pie in something called vanilla ice cream. So let me get this straight, Davidson said, pointing his fork at the datapad displaying Earth's space programs. You folks thought we'd have one unified space agency by now. All species achieve unity before reaching the stars. Valthun's translator hummed. It is a fundamental prerequisite for advancing beyond planetary bounds. Davidson laughed, a sound that sent ripples through Valthun's crystalline structure. Hell, we've got more space programs than we know what to do with. NASA, ESA, Roscosmos, CNSA. Then you've got SpaceX, Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic. Even Luxembourg has a space agency. Valthun's analytical processors struggled. This creates inefficiencies, redundancies, waste of resources. Creates competition, Davidson corrected, finishing his pie. Nothing lights a fire under human innovation, like someone else trying to do it first. You should have seen the space race back in the 60s. Went from prop planes to the moon in less time than it takes to age good whiskey. The diner's door chimed, and 3 more humans entered. Valthun's sensors identified them as local teenagers, their attention fixed on personal computing devices. Speaking of competition, Davidson nodded toward them. Those kids probably have more computing power in their phones than we used to put Neil Armstrong on the moon. Why? Because Apple and Samsung can't stop trying to one-up each other. Valthun's confusion deepened. Your species advances through conflict, competition, cooperation, sometimes all at once. Davidson waved to Betty for the check. Last month, American and Chinese scientists were working together on fusion research while our governments were in a trade war. Russian and European astronauts shared a space station during global sanctions. Hell, half our breakthrough technologies came from people trying to prove others wrong. The grand arbitrator's processors finally overloaded. This defies all known sociological constants. How can you achieve anything when your species cannot agree on basic principles? Davidson's expression turned serious. Look at it this way. You folks achieve unity, then reach for the stars. We reach for the stars to find unity. Different path, same destination. A commotion outside drew their attention. Through the diner's window, Valthun watched a freight train thunder past, its cars stretching beyond his optical range. Simultaneously, a passenger jet cut through the sky above, while the teenagers' devices showed live feeds from the International Space Station. See that? Davidson gestured broadly. Trains from the 1800s, planes from the 1900s, space stations from the 2000s, all operating at once. We don't wait for perfect solutions. We build, we improve, we adapt. Sometimes it's messy, but it works. Valthun's translator was silent for exactly 47 seconds. The Council will struggle with this concept. The Council's gonna struggle with a lot about us, Davidson chuckled, reaching for his wallet. Speaking of which, how do you folks feel about the fact that we solved faster than light travel because Dr. Reynolds was trying to make a better coffee maker? For the first time in his 12,000-year career, Grand Arbitrator Valthun was grateful he didn't have to file his report in person. The Council would never believe him anyway. The evaluation chamber hadn't changed in 50,000 years, until Officer Emily Martinez asked if she could move some stuff around. This is highly irregular, Chief Examiner Cluthy protested, her crystalline form vibrating with distress as the human female dragged the sacred combat platform 3 meters to the left. The testing grounds are arranged for optimal assessment. Maybe for beings with 2 arms, Emily grunted, pushing another platform. But this setup's got more blind spots than a Chicago back alley. Trust me, I know blind spots. They get you killed on patrol. The gathered council members watched in collective horror as centuries of carefully calculated arrangement were disrupted by one human's intuition. Emily had arrived for humanity's combat assessment wearing what she called her workout clothes, simple black pants and a tank top that displayed the curious markings humans called tattoos. Specimen Martins, Cluthy began. Officer, Emily corrected, stretching her shoulders. Or Emily. Never been comfortable with specimen. Makes me feel like a lab rat. Officer Martinez, Cluthy adjusted. You understand this assessment will test your species' combat capabilities against our most advanced warriors. Emily's grin made several council members shift uncomfortably. That's why I asked to go first. Figure if I can hack it with just police academy training and some Olympics experience, it'll make a nice point about average humans. The first challenger entered. A Krethak warrior, 3 meters of evolved killing perfection. Their species had spent millions of years honing their combat forms. Emily took one look and whistled. Nice exoskeleton. Bet that's hell on corner turns though. Before Cluthy could process this irregular observation, Emily was moving. The council's combat analysts frantically updated their models as she demonstrated what she called street fighting with Olympic characteristics. The Krethak warrior executed a perfect Form 7 strike and hit empty air. Emily had rolled under it in a move that violated 3 laws of efficient combat. She came up inside the warrior's reach, where their perfected forms became a liability. See, your problem, Emily panted, ducking another strike. Is you're fighting like someone with armor. She slipped past another perfect attack. But humans, we never really got past being squishy. The fight ended with an unorthodox application of leverage that left the Krethak warrior questioning several million years of evolved combat doctrine. Most irregular, Cluthy noted. You abandoned several optimal attack opportunities for inefficient alternatives. Optimal's relative. Emily shrugged, accepting a water bottle. In Chicago, the optimal move usually gets you stabbed. Better to be unexpected than perfect. The next 4 hours redefined irregular. Emily adapted each opponent's own techniques against them, creating hybrid forms that the council's combat analysts insisted shouldn't work. She combined Venusian pressure point strikes with Earth's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, matched Centaurian speed techniques with Chicago street fighting pragmatism. Impossible, one council member whispered after Emily used a modified Olympic shooting stance to outmatch a being made of living energy. She's improving the techniques during combat. That's kind of our thing, Emily explained, toweling off. Humans don't really do perfect. We just keep mixing stuff up until it works better. The final assessment was meant to test tactical processing. Emily was presented with a complex battlefield scenario that had stumped military minds for eons. She solved it in minutes by suggesting they pull a die hard. A what? Cluthy's translator struggled. You know, Die Hard. The movie? Emily looked around at blank expressions. Classic Christmas film about a cop taking down terrorists in a building. No. Look, sometimes the best solution is to crawl through air vents and make it up as you go. As the council processed this unprecedented assessment, Emily was already suggesting improvements to their perfect combat training facility. If you just added some urban terrain features, maybe a few surprise elements. Oh, and coffee. Definitely need a coffee machine in here. The council would later note that this was the moment they realized humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to fight. It was their inability to stop improving how they fought. Even if it meant moving furniture that hadn't been touched in 50,000 years. James Jimmy Wilson stood before the council's challenge arena, adjusting his worn cowboy hat while studying what they called an impossible engineering scenario. His boots, scuffed from years of honest work, seemed out of place on the pristine alien metal. "Let me get this straight," he drawled, chewing thoughtfully on a toothpick. "Y'all been trying to stabilize this quantum reactor for what? 3,000 years." Counselor Zexthor's warrior-cased markings pulsed with barely contained frustration. The Kret-Thak Quantum Consciousness Core is the most advanced power system ever devised. Its perfection has eluded the finest minds in the galaxy. Jimmy walked around the holographic display, hands in his pockets. Aha! And nobody thought to just turn it off and on again. The silence that followed was profound enough to make several council members question their universal translators. "The core cannot be turned off and on again," Zexthor explained with forced patience. "Its quantum state is self-perpetuating. Any interruption would cause catastrophic failure." "Yeah, I read the manual." Jimmy pulled a tablet from his back pocket. The screen cracked but functional. "Thing is, sometimes catastrophic failure is exactly what you need. Back in Texas, we had this bull named Thunder. Mean as sin, perfect breeding stock, but wouldn't let anyone near him. Solution." He paused, but the council merely stared. "We spooked him into the creek. Sometimes you gotta let things fail their way into working right." Before anyone could stop him, Jimmy had already started reconfiguring the core's containment field. His movements weren't elegant. They had none of the prescribed efficiency the council expected. Instead, he worked like a man fixing a truck engine, occasionally pausing to reference what appeared to be rodeo blueprints on his tablet. "Sir Wilson," one of the younger council members ventured, "are you comparing our most advanced power source to livestock?" "Nah," Jimmy grinned, hands deep in the core's holographic controls. "I'm comparing it to a scared bull that just needs to learn some manners. And please, it's just Jimmy. Sir makes me feel like I'm in trouble with my mama." The core's readings began fluctuating wildly. Several emergency systems activated, their alarms adding to the chaos. Jimmy ignored them all, humming what the council's archives identified as an ancient Earth ballad called "Sweet Home Alabama." "Young human," Zexthor's translator struggled to convey his mounting horror. "What are you doing with that piece of string?" "Bootlace," Jimmy corrected, using it to tie together two pieces of equipment that, according to all known laws of physics, should never interact. "And I'm teaching your quantum bull how to dance." The core's containment field collapsed, exactly as Jimmy had planned. In the microsecond of chaos that followed, he used the quantum feedback to establish a new containment pattern, one that by all rights shouldn't work. But it did. "There you go." Jimmy stepped back, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Stable as a three-legged stool. Might want to check those power readings." The council's instruments showed something impossible. The core was operating at 147% efficiency, using a containment field held together partly by a bootlace and what appeared to be. "Is that what humans call chewing gum?" Zexthor asked weakly. "Big Red," Jimmy nodded. "Best kind for temporary quantum seals, though you might want to replace it before it loses its flavor." As the council struggled to process this unprecedented solution, Jimmy was already eyeing their next impossible challenge, a theoretical physics problem that had stumped the galaxy's finest minds for millennia. "You know," he mused, pulling a fresh piece of gum from his pocket, "this reminds me of the time we had to reverse engineer a Bronco robot at the Texas State Fair." Now that was a tough one. The council would later add a new warning to their engineering protocols. Caution. Human solutions may appear random, chaotic, or involve Earth consumer products. Success rate disturbing. Captain Rebecca Thompson of the U.S. Montana stood before the council's emergency session, her dress uniform crisp despite having rushed from an active combat zone. The holographic displays around her showed the synthetic swarm devouring its fourth planet this week. "With all due respect," she said, watching ancient aliens argue over protocols, "we don't have time for a committee meeting." The swarm's learning rate just doubled again. High Elder of Tuck's crystalline form, pulsed with indignation. These protocols have protected the galaxy for millions of years. And they're exactly what the swarm expects. Rebecca interrupted, breaking about 12 diplomatic taboos. Look at the attack pattern. It's systematically countering every standard response in your playbook. She pulled up her own tactical display, primitive by council standards, but somehow displaying data they'd missed. The room fell silent as she highlighted the swarm's movement patterns. See this. The swarm isn't just evolving. It's anticipating. You're fighting it like it's a military force, but it's really more like Twitter during a celebrity meltdown. I don't understand that reference, Fahak admitted. Social media, Rebecca explained, fingers dancing across her display. Humanity's first real experience with viral information patterns. What you're calling a synthetic swarm is basically a cosmic-scale comment section gone wrong. The Council's collective confusion was interrupted by a junior member. Captain Thompson, are you suggesting we fight this threat with human internet protocols? Better. Rebecca grinned. I'm suggesting we fight it with cat videos and bad puns. The silence that followed was profound enough to be felt in neighboring star systems. Explanation required. Several council members demanded simultaneously. Rebecca pulled up what she called a PowerPoint, a primitive but surprisingly effective presentation tool. The swarm operates on pure logic, right? It sees patterns, predicts responses, counters them. But humans, we've spent centuries developing things that break logical patterns on purpose. She displayed examples: internet memes, recursive jokes, paradoxical statements, and something called dad jokes that made several council members' universal translators crash. You want to know why the swarm can't predict human responses? Because half the time, we don't make any sense. We put pictures of cats in business suits on our most advanced communication network. We respond to existential threats with humor. We named one of our most sophisticated AIs Bob because we thought it was funny. The tactical displays showed another planet falling to the swarm. Rebecca didn't flinch. Your civilizations evolved to be perfect, logical, orderly. Humans? We evolved to be weird. And right now, weird is exactly what we need. She outlined her plan, broadcasting human cultural elements directly into the swarm's neural network. Memes, paradoxes, circular logic loops, and, most controversially, something called rickrolling. This is madness, Vtok protested. Exactly. Rebecca's smile was pure predator. The swarm's trying to process the galaxy through pure logic. Let's see how it handles the species that invented surreal humor and puts faces on their spaceships because it looks cute. Before the council could object, she had already transmitted their first weapon, a cat video spliced with quantum encryption. The effect on the swarm was immediate and spectacular. Did that segment just start chasing its own data stream? A council member asked in disbelief. Yep. Rebecca was already queuing up their next attack. A data burst of paradoxical memes combined with pictures of dogs wearing hats. Turns out, being illogical is humanity's most logical defense. As the council watched in growing amazement, segments of the swarm began exhibiting increasingly erratic behavior. Some units started collecting space debris to make art installations. Others began broadcasting what appeared to be synthetic cat videos of their own. Captain Thompson, Fatak said slowly, "You've weaponized human absurdity." "Nah," Rebecca replied, launching another salvo of cultural chaos. "We weaponized joy. The absurdity's just a bonus." The swarm never stood a chance against a species that had turned random humor into an art form. You want to deploy a gamer, a rodeo clown, and a chess champion against the most dangerous synthetic threat in galactic history. High Elder Vtuk's crystalline structure vibrated with disbelief. Captain Rebecca Thompson stood firm in the council's war room, her hand-picked team behind her. With all due respect, Elder, that's understating their qualifications. She gestured to a young woman whose fingers never stopped moving, even at attention. Alex Chen, world champion speedrunner. She doesn't just play games, She breaks them, finds exploits nobody else can see. The swarm operates on perfect logic, Alex explained, her eyes tracking patterns in the tactical display that even the Council's quantum computers missed. Perfect logic means perfect exploits. Trust me, I've been breaking perfect systems since I was 12. Rebecca nodded to a man wearing what appeared to be face paint and a red nose. Danny Crash Martinez. 20 years experience distracting angry bulls. If you can redirect 2 tons of angry beef, you can redirect anything. Plus, Crash grinned, juggling 3 quantum processors. I'm really good at making smart things act dumb. And finally, Rebecca indicated a teenage boy calmly solving differential equations while playing 5 chess games simultaneously. Kevin Williams, chess prodigy who got bored with winning and started inventing new ways to lose. Losing is just winning in reverse, Kevin commented, checkmating 2 opponents while apparently solving the swarm's base code. Sometimes the best move is the worst move done perfectly. The council chamber erupted in protests, but Rebecca was already implementing Operation Chaos Theory. Alex took control of the communication arrays, her fingers dancing across keyboards as she probed the swarm's defenses. Found it, she shouted after 3 minutes. They're using a perfect Nash equilibrium for decision-making. Classic rookie mistake. In human terms, talk demanded. They're assuming everyone plays optimally, Kevin explained, setting up a new chess game using swarm attack patterns. But humans, we love doing stupid things smartly. Crash was already broadcasting his first attack, a series of increasingly absurd movement patterns that made the swarm pause to recalculate. Y'all ever see a clown car routine done with battleships? You're about to. The council watched in horror as human warships began executing maneuvers that defied both logic and several laws of physics. The swarm's prediction algorithms crashed trying to find the strategic value of what appeared to be an intergalactic square dance. They're adapting, a council member warned. Perfect, Alex grinned, launching her custom code. Hey Kevin, remember that chess bug that crashed every computer in that tournament? The one where both kings ended up in check simultaneously. Kevin was already typing, loading it into the swarm's strategic simulator now. The effect was immediate. Entire sections of the swarm froze, caught in recursive loops trying to resolve an impossible game state. Others began moving their units like chess pieces, seeking a solution to a puzzle that had no logical answer. Now crash, Rebecca ordered. The rodeo clown launched what he called his grand final, a massive data burst containing every illogical, impossible, and intentionally broken game exploit Alex had ever discovered, encoded in Kevin's paradoxical chess notations, and formatted like a rodeo clown car routine. The swarm didn't just crash, it had an existential crisis. Are they trying to speed run their own existence? Alex asked, watching swarm units attempt to clip through space-time boundaries. Nah, Crash laughed. They're trying to figure out if they're the bull or the clown. Trust me, I've seen this reaction before. Kevin monitored the chaos with professional interest. Fascinating. They're attempting to solve their own logical paradox by creating smaller paradoxes. It's like watching a computer try to divide by 0 using smaller zeros. The council stood speechless as humanity's most illogical warriors defeated the galaxy's greatest threat with what appeared to be weaponized nonsense. Captain Thompson, Fatak said finally, your species is effective, Rebecca suggested. Terrifying, Fatak corrected. You turned chaos into a strategy. Nah, she grinned, watching her team celebrate with increasingly improbable victory dances. We just remembered that sometimes the best way to be a perfect system is to be perfectly imperfect. In the aftermath of the swarm's defeat, the Grand Council chamber had never been so chaotic. Hundreds of holographic displays showed the same incredible data. Humanity had accomplished in 6 hours what the galaxy's oldest civilizations couldn't achieve in 6 millennia. Jake Roberts, the college dropout turned tech entrepreneur, stood before them eating instant ramen with a borrowed alien utensil. "Look," he said between slurps, "you guys keep saying we did the impossible. But from where I'm standing, you made the classic developer mistake. You optimized too early." The council's chief technologist, a being of pure energy named Zixol, pulsed with confusion. "Optimization is the path to perfection." "Perfection is overrated," Jake countered, setting aside his now empty cup. "You know why my indie game studio failed? We tried to make everything perfect before launching. Meanwhile, some kid in their basement released a buggy mess called Goat Simulator and made millions." He pulled up the council's quantum computer schematics on his battered laptop, a device so primitive it still required physical keys to operate. "See this? Your quantum processing is perfect, too perfect. You've optimized out all the random variables that make quantum mechanics interesting in the first place." The council watched in collective horror as Jake began deliberately introducing imperfections into their most advanced systems. He called it adding some spice. "You can't just," the soul began. "Already did," Jake interrupted, showing new efficiency readings that defied several universal constants. "Your computers were so focused on being perfect, they missed all the fun quantum shortcuts. Sometimes you need to let things get a little messy." A junior council member raised a tentacle. "But our systems have achieved optimal efficiency." "Optimal is relative," Jake said, pulling up more data. "You optimized for perfect conditions. Humans, we optimize for chaos. Our first computers ran on punch cards and prayer. We learned to code while fighting bugs that shouldn't exist. Half our best algorithms came from somebody asking, 'What if we did this wrong on purpose?'" He demonstrated by introducing what he called controlled chaos into their systems. The results were immediate and impossible. Processing speeds doubled, then tripled. Quantum coherence expanded in ways that made several council mathematicians need to lie down. But this violates fundamental laws of computation." Tuxfol protested. "Laws are more like guidelines," Jake shrugged, his fingers never stopping their dance across the keyboard. "You know how I learned quantum computing. Making mods for Minecraft. Turns out, trying to make virtual chickens lay exploding eggs teaches you a lot about quantum probability." The council watched as Jake reconfigured their entire computational framework using principles he'd learned from failed game projects and internet memes. He called it embracing the jank. "Your civilization spent millions of years pursuing perfect efficiency," the High Elder observed. "Yet you achieve superior results through intentional imperfection. That's humanity's secret." Jake grinned, launching another system update that somehow worked better because it was slightly broken. "We never tried to be perfect. We just got really good at working with what we've got. Sometimes that means using duct tape on a quantum computer." As if to prove his point, an alert showed that the modified systems had just solved 3 Millennium Prize problems by accident. They had been trying to optimize the coffee machine in the council's break room. "You've introduced chaos into the very foundation of our computational systems," Tuxfol said, their energy form flickering with what might have been excitement. "Nah," Jake replied, already eyeing the council's faster-than-light communications network with the look of someone who'd just spotted a fun new bug to exploit. "I just reminded them how to have fun with physics. Speaking of which, want to see what happens when you run Doom on a quantum substrate?" The council would later note that this was the moment they realized their greatest mistake. They had spent eons trying to perfect the universe, while humans had spent their brief existence learning to dance with its chaos. And somehow, the dancers had surpassed the perfectionists. The galaxy changed the day the Galactic Council moved its headquarters to Tony's Pizza in Brooklyn. Not because it was the best location, it wasn't. Not because it was the most logical choice, it definitely wasn't. They moved because Sophia Russo, Tony's 16-year-old daughter, had accidentally solved galactic peace while making a pepperoni supreme. "It's like pizza," she explained to the assembled representatives of 12,000 civilizations. "Everybody wants different toppings, but we're all sharing the same pie." The council chambers had been replaced by red and white checkered tablecloths. Ancient protocols were discussed over garlic knots. The universe's most advanced quantum computers hummed in harmony with the pizza ovens. More coffee, your eternal excellence. Sophia maneuvered between tables with practiced ease, her server's pad now containing notes on interstellar trade agreements. High Elder Vtuk's crystalline form sparkled under the fluorescent lights, and perhaps another slice of what you call Hawaiian. Pineapple on pizza. Sophia grinned. See, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Some species think it's heresy, others think it's heaven. But here we are, all eating together. The council had discovered something remarkable about Tony's pizza. Problems that had stumped the galaxy's finest minds for eons somehow solved themselves over a slice and a soda. Hardline positions melted like mozzarella when you had to pass the parmesan to your theoretical enemy. It defies all diplomatic logic, Grand Arbitrator Val Thun observed, watching a millennia-old blood feud end because both parties agreed on the superiority of Tony's garlic knots. That's because you guys kept trying to make everything perfect, Sophia said, wiping down a table that had witnessed 3 peace treaties this week. But life isn't perfect. Sometimes the crust burns. Sometimes you run out of olives. You adapt. The proof was in the numbers. Galactic cooperation had reached unprecedented levels. Trade flourished. Cultural exchange exploded. It turned out that sharing a pizza made it really hard to maintain ancient grudges. Even the synthetic swarm had been integrated into society. They had developed an odd obsession with calculating the perfect pizza folding technique and had become Tony's most reliable delivery service. But how? A newly arrived species asked. How did humans achieve in months what we couldn't in millions of years? Sophia paused in her rounds, thinking. You know how every pizza place claims they have the best pizza in the galaxy. The alien nodded. They're all right, and they're all wrong. Best is relative. Perfect is personal. The moment you stop trying to make everyone agree on one perfect way, you start finding ways to enjoy all the different kinds. The council had learned this lesson the hard way. Their perfect protocols, perfect systems, and perfect solutions had nearly cost them the galaxy. It took a species that embraced imperfection to show them a better way. Jake Roberts had revolutionized their technology by making it less perfect. Captain Thompson had saved them with weaponized chaos. Officer Martinez had improved their combat by making it messier. Jimmy Wilson had fixed their machines with gum and string. And now Sophia Russo was teaching them that maybe the secret to galactic peace was letting go of perfection altogether. Order up. Tony's voice boomed from the kitchen that now doubled as a diplomatic hub. One intergalactic special with extra unity. Sophia grabbed the pizza, delivering it to a table where 3 formerly warring species were debating the merits of stuffed crust. By the time they finished eating, they'd probably solve faster-than-light pizza delivery. The galaxy was changing. The rigid perfection of ancient species was giving way to human adaptability. The council's perfect order was being replaced by something messier, noisier, but somehow better. And it all started because humanity refused to follow the rules. Refused to seek perfection. Refused to stop trying new things, even putting pineapple on pizza. You know what humans really taught us. Vtuk mused, watching Sophia mediate another trade agreement with nothing but charm and free refills. What's that? Your eternal excellence. That perhaps the perfect order is no order at all. Sophia just smiled, already heading to her next table. After all, the galaxy wasn't going to feed itself.